So us as human beings, many of us, when we are looking at a problem, imagine, so how many of you in this room have no problems? Raise your hand. I'm looking around, and surprisingly, no one is raising their hand. Raise your hand if you have no problems. Raise your hand if you have no challenges. Okay, Alhamdulillah, welcome to Dunya. We are all here. And this is just what it means to be in Dunya, right? We're not in Jannah, we're gonna have struggles and we're gonna have problems. But here's what happens, is when you have problems, now I want you to fast forward and I want you to go up to the branch and I want you to go to the leaf and I want you to go to the fruit. And when you notice on the branch and on the leaf and on the fruit that there's something wrong with the fruit, there's something going wrong with the fruit or with the branch, what are you gonna do? Well, you can be like, okay, let me take that fruit and it must be the fruit's fault, you know, or let me try to fix the fruit or the branch physically, you know, at the local level of the branch. Is that gonna work? What do you have to do if there's a problem with the branch or the fruit? Anyone? You gotta go to the roots, because there's something in the roots. And what ends up happening for many of us is that when we face a problem, when we face some sort of dysfunction, or some sort of break, or some sort of challenge, many of us, we go to different ways of coping with that problem, different ways of dealing with that challenge. Now, here is where I'm going to bring in some psychological terminology, and that is fight or flight. You guys have heard this before. Do you guys know what it means? And you probably hear it a lot. But you know what it actually means? What it actually means is, this is what that specific human being does when they feel threatened, or when they think that they're not safe. Everybody with me? So this is when, if any of us feel unsafe, we feel there's a threat. And by the way, the threat doesn't just mean there's a lion in my house. A threat could be somebody's mad at me. A threat could be someone doesn't want to be my friend anymore. Right? A threat could be I've disappointed someone. I've upset someone. I've let someone down. So when a person feels a threat, or maybe there's a problem in your relationship, maybe you have a challenge with your child, maybe you have a challenge in your marriage, maybe you have a mental health challenge, all of these things. A lot of us, what we will do is we'll go to our coping mechanism. Now, what is the coping mechanism? Well, there are 4 types. Fight and flight, which is what we already know about. What is fight or flight? Fight is the person who sees the lion and says, this is a threat, I'm gonna fight the lion. Okay, so this is confrontation. Flight is, as you can imagine, the opposite. Flight is, I see a lion, I'm getting out of here. I'm gonna run away. So this is a person who deals with problems by running away from problems, by hiding from problems, by, my personal favorite is lifting up the carpet or the rug and sweeping it under it, right? So flight, avoidance, this is called avoidance. But there are 2 more coping mechanisms, and those 2 more, the first is fight, flight, freeze. Freeze is kind of what happens to like a deer in headlights. The deer sees the headlights and is like, this is a threat. What am I gonna do? Absolutely nothing. Freeze is kind of like when an animal plays dead. It's being frozen, unable to take action. And you kind of shut down. It's like a shutdown. It's the turtle going in its shell type of thing. Actually, that's a little bit like flight, but I would say it's more the deer in headlights, just frozen, playing dead. Now, what does this look like for a human being? So freeze, and actually there's something called functional freeze. Functional freeze is actually when you're still living your life, but you're essentially, your nervous system is frozen. So you're constantly really tired. Now I'm describing everyone, right? Oh, wow. Well, also we're fasting, so, but I'm talking about outside of Ramadan, okay?
Us too.
That too, yeah. Outside of Ramadan. So some of the symptoms of functional freeze are like you're always very drained, always very tired. A lot of difficulty making any decisions. Like it's almost like you're frozen. You don't know which way to go. You know, it's that deer that's just like, what do I do? That is actually a coping mechanism of a nervous system that is stressed. It is a coping mechanism of self-protection, all right? The fourth is also, I think, probably a favorite for this group because we're women, and that's fawn. Does anyone know what that is referring to? That's people pleasing. So what that looks like is you see a threat, so you see the lion, and you try to appease the lion. You try to tell the lion, no, please don't eat me, I'll get you McDonald's instead. You know, you're trying to actually please, you're trying to appease the lion so that, to save yourself. Now, the issue with people pleasing, you might be like, well, that seems like the best option, right? Right? Here's the problem with people pleasing, is it doesn't just mean being nice to people. It doesn't just mean being polite. It means, yeah, it could mean bootlicking, definitely. But it's like, here, have my left arm if it's gonna make you happy. If it'll make you more comfortable, I'll cut it off for you. Here, and I'll give you mine. You understand the difference between being polite? Now it seems like, I get that. Sacrifice. Thank you, sister. My favorite word. Now, let me tell you why it's my favorite word. I mean that very sarcastically. Because it's been actually used in a very toxic way in our cultures. What's happened is, especially women have been taught, and by the way, I want to make this very clear. This is culture, this is not Islam. Islam does not say that any human being should be the sacrificial lamb of the family. You know, in Ramadan, in Hajj, the days of Hajj, we have the udhiyah. That's for the udhiyah, not for you. But the problem is that the culture teaches this. The culture teaches, and I'm gonna have you guys do an exercise. Are you ready? I want you to think about your grandmother for a second. Everybody have their grandmother in their mind? And I want you to think about how is your grandmother described and praised? Does it sound something like, you know, she really contributed to society? Or does it sound more like she was really good at drinking poison? She was so good at drinking poison and still keeping a smile on her face. She sacrificed. We use words like the two S's. Sabr, sabr and sacrifice. And these are two words that are completely misused to oppress. And this is injustice. And Allah tells us in the Quran countless times that dhulm, oppression, is not acceptable to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it should not be acceptable to us. But why I say this is, when we grow up, and now we're getting back to the seed, okay? We're getting back to the root here. When we grow up in an environment where it is not safe, And when I say it is not safe, this can mean many things. It can mean that it is not safe physically because of abuse, both either physical or sexual or emotional or mental. Or it can be unsafe because the people around you are unstable. So even if, say, you could say, well, I wasn't abused, but what's happening around you is dysfunctional and unstable. So I want you to think about a minefield. Do you guys all know what a minefield is? A minefield is like in war, where they will plant and hide like mines that will explode if you step on them, but you don't know where they are. So anybody can step on them at any time, and you have no idea where they are until after you've stepped on them, and then they explode. And so for somebody who grows up in an environment that is a minefield, that is like a minefield, meaning you don't know when you might step on something that then explodes. When people grow up, when a human being grows up in that type of environment, they have to learn ways to protect themselves. And one of the ways that children learn to protect themselves in such an environment is through people pleasing. It's through, let me just make sure that I keep the peace. I have to do whatever is necessary to keep the peace, because otherwise I'm not safe. And as the other lesson is this, is that if a parent teaches the child that, see, my love for you and my connection to you is conditional. Do you know what that means? It means that as long as you do as I say, you'll have my love and you'll have connection to me. But at the moment you don't do what I want, or you don't achieve, or you don't perform, or you don't do as I, and some parents, they have like a long list, right? And some parents are very, very harsh, and some parents are perfectionists. And so, say if a child is given the message that unless you perform A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and the list might change over time, but unless you fulfill these things, and if you slip on any of these things, I will withhold my love. I will give you the silent treatment. I will be cold. I will be harsh. I will, even maybe be physical or insult you. That's called conditional love. That's conditional love. That means that it has conditions. Now, as parents, we essentially have basically just one job. All right? And that is to love our children unconditionally and to guide them. To guide them. So, how many of you were in the halaqah last year? Did you hear the GPS example? That's what I want you to remember. The way that a GPS responds when you make a wrong turn. Because the GPS doesn't scream at you. The GPS doesn't hit you, for sure. And the GPS also doesn't shame you. The GPS doesn't say, you worthless driver. I have noticed that you have no sense of direction. You've made 50 wrong turns. What's wrong with you? Can you imagine if the GPS did that and then was like, you know what, I think you should stop trying to drive, just park up. But as parents, we do this. We're actually like the crazy GPS. Because when our children make a wrong turn, do we redirect them or do we shame them? Do we shame them? And do we withhold love from them? There's another big issue that we have in the way we raise children, especially in our cultures. And that is that we believe that our number one goal is to raise an obedient child. Am I right? To raise an obedient child and to raise a well-behaved child. These two things. These are not actually the correct goals. Do you know that? Your goal, yes, your hope is to raise a child who is obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But the goal is not obedience to you. Because if you raise a child and the number one objective is blind obedience to you as an authority figure, you've just done something very dangerous. Because you've made that child the same way that they will obey you, they will obey others in authority, even if they're abusing them. And so that child becomes easier to oppress, and easier to take advantage of, and easier to do what? Walk all over, because you've taught them obedience over anything else. The other thing that you've taught them is that to survive their environment, and this is all still in the roots, guys, this is the seed, this is childhood, because this is where it all happened, this is where all the blueprint is happening for all of us. So you've also taught that child that in order to survive their environment, they need to have no boundaries. Now I want to explain, because you guys have probably heard this word a lot, like what does that mean? Boundaries, what does it mean? I want you to understand what boundaries doesn't mean being rude. Because it's like there's this idea that's like, oh, you want to be rude and you call it boundary. No, I've actually heard people say this, like from a religious perspective. No, boundaries doesn't mean that you want to be rude. I'll tell you what a boundary is. You know how in your house you have walls? Is there anyone who has a house with no walls? Raise your hand if you have a house with no front door. Doesn't exist, right? Boundaries are your walls and your front door. They are absolutely necessary. What would happen if you broke down all your walls and your front door? How safe are you going to be? Anyone can do anything, right? Come on in. There is no boundary. And so a boundary is to have a door, to have walls where this is okay, this is not okay. For example, someone wants to come to your house at 3 a.m. I mean, your door is closed, you're sleeping, right? They can't just walk in. If someone wants to just walk in without letting you know or without ringing the doorbell, not okay, right? Boundaries. So what happens is that if we learn in childhood that the only way to survive is to basically put down our boundaries, break down the door, no boundaries, people pleasing, meaning I'm going to suppress what I need, I'm going to suppress what I think just to make you happy. And if you need an extra arm, here's one. Here you go. The problem with that is that behavior then is taken into adulthood. And now you continue to live without boundaries, people pleasing, where you are suppressing what you actually need and what you actually feel. And when you want to say no, you don't know how. Because you were raised to please. You were raised to be pleasant and please and do what other people around you want in order to be safe. Because you would otherwise have your love, the love of your parent and the approval of your parent taken away. And maybe there would even be consequences. You might not even be safe. Now, why is this so dangerous? Well, I'll give you one reason why it's dangerous. So let me go back first to the house with the wall, without the walls. So now you're sitting in a house, no walls, no door. This is a person who doesn't have boundaries. Doesn't have any, this is okay, that's not okay, this is the red line. There's no red lines. Anyone can do anything. Now imagine that you add to that. You know the security system around your house, the alarm system, right? Now imagine that you take that alarm system and you take out the batteries. You break the alarm system. So now you have no alarm, and you have no walls, and you have no door. So you see that alarm system? Do you know what that is? That is healthy anger. I bet you never knew that was a thing. Does anyone know that that's a thing? I was speaking to a sister in Malaysia, and I said the suppression of healthy anger, and she was genuinely confused. And she's like, is there such thing as healthy anger? Do you know we don't even think that there is a thing called healthy anger? Because we think that all anger must be suppressed. This is what's interesting. We've confused a few things. What is dangerous about anger? What is dangerous about anger is when we don't properly manage the anger. What is dangerous about anger is when the anger is in control instead of me. Got it? But the anger itself was created for a purpose. Anger was created for a purpose. Do you think Allah does anything without a purpose? All of our emotions have a purpose. See, our issue, and this is, by the way, if we want to talk about the root cause of a lot of our suffering, it's this point, is that we want to take emotions and put them into two categories. Good emotions and bad emotions. And then we want to say, I only want the good emotions, and I don't want to feel the bad emotions. This is actually the root cause of a lot of our problems. Do you know that there is actually no such thing as good emotions and bad emotions? Both, all kinds of emotions are actually messengers. They are giving you a message. They serve a purpose, including anger. What is the purpose of anger? The purpose of anger is the alarm system around your house. When is it supposed to go off? When someone is encroaching, when someone is overstepping the boundaries. And now it's meant to tell you there's a problem, you're not safe. Someone has overstepped. But imagine that you've taken out the batteries, your alarm is not working. The alarm is not working. So now if an intruder wants to come in, there's absolutely nothing to stop them. And this is why you can be taken advantage of. And this is why, and now this brings me to some research that has found that the majority of people who get autoimmune diseases are women, and it is linked to the suppression of healthy anger. Autoimmune disease. Fibromyalgia is just one of them. Rheumatoid arthritis, Crohn's disease. All of these autoimmune diseases are actually linked, they found is linked to the suppression of healthy anger. So now let's go back to the roots. Someone's up. Go back to the roots, I feel you. Go back to the roots. What did I learn to do to cope in childhood? What did I have to learn to do to cope in childhood? Did I have to learn to break down the walls, break down the door, have no boundaries, and turn off the alarm system so that I never make a fuss? I'm gonna tell you something else. How many oldest daughters in the room? Y'all feel me. See, it makes sense. I'm the middle child, so I'm the crazy one, but oldest daughters, it's a real thing. It's actually a real thing. Oldest daughter syndrome, right? Basically, oldest daughters tend, in a lot of cases, in a lot of homes, to be the sacrificial lamb of the family. All right. Women in general, but the oldest daughters tend to be responsible for everyone and everything. If something isn't going right, it's on you to fix it. It's on you to carry it. And this doesn't end at just problems. This even includes, and listen to this, this includes absorbing other people's emotions for them. As if it's your responsibility, not just to fix problems, but to fix other people's emotions. So what's happening is, one way I've heard it described is that when a person doesn't know how to regulate their own emotions, this person, this other sacrificial lamb, will come and feel that it is their job to regulate for that other person. Do you understand what I mean? So someone else who doesn't know how to deal with their own emotions, so oldest daughter comes along, don't worry, I'll take care of it. I will regulate your anger, frustration, emotional immaturity, whatever, for you by taking it upon myself to fix it. Do you know how much weight that is to carry that isn't yours to carry?
Too much.
Thank you, sister. Too much. And this is why we get sick. Have you heard of a book called The Body Keeps Score? That's what it's talking about. It's saying that the body, even if you think that you've swept it under the rug, the body's keeping track. And this is why we get sick. And this is why many of us live in chronic fight or flight or freeze or fawn. Chronic dysregulation of the nervous system, essentially. Basically, we're chronically, I'll put it in words that you're familiar, chronically in survival mode. And the survival isn't about the lion anymore. The survival isn't about a tsunami that's coming. The survival is, I have to keep everyone happy. That's a law. And if someone's unhappy, it's my job to make them happy. And if someone's stressed, it's my job to take on their stress. And if someone has a problem, it's my job to save them. And if someone has an issue, it's my job to fix it, to save it. See all that weight? It goes somewhere. It goes somewhere. But this was programmed in childhood. That's what I'm trying to say. This didn't come out of nowhere. This survival mechanism. This coping mechanism was wired and it was developed in childhood because of the environment and because of the people around that child. So I say this because the other thing to keep in mind is this, okay? We hear the word trauma a lot, right? If you guys are on social media, right? A lot of people think that trauma is something bad that happened to you, right? And there's plenty of that. But trauma isn't only something bad that happened to you. Trauma is also when something you needed didn't happen to you. So it's also deprivation. It's also abandonment. It's also neglect. And when I say that, it doesn't mean that your parent walked out on you necessarily. But one thing that we have a lot of in our community is we have a lot of this thing called generational trauma. And what that means is that we are passing on trauma from generation to generation. So when you have a child who grows up in some sort of dysfunction, either because something bad happened or something that the child needs to be healthy never happened. For example, love. Children need love to develop in a healthy way. Unconditional love. Children need a parent to connect to in a healthy way, where the child does not have to work hard for that relationship to work. Children shouldn't have to work hard to make a relationship with the parent work. A child should just be a child, and the parent's job is to give that child what they need to grow into a healthy human being. And what that is unconditional love. It's to attune to the emotions of the child rather than ignore the emotions of the child. One of the most common things that we have in our community is parents who are emotionally unavailable. Do you guys know what that means? It's a parent whose emotions are shut down. A parent who is not connected to their own emotions and therefore does not know how to express it. And as a result of a person, when a person is disconnected from their own emotion and does not know how to manage their own emotions or listen to their own emotions or process their own emotions, then they most definitely do not know how to listen and process and make space for another person's emotions. So this person who is disconnected from their own emotions is always going to think that someone else's emotions are too much. You know the statement, "You're too sensitive"? Anybody know what I'm talking about? Okay. That statement, "You're too sensitive" or "you're too this," is coming from a person who is totally disconnected from their own emotions. And therefore, they don't know how to deal with anyone's emotions. If they don't know how to deal with their own, how are they going to be able to handle yours? They become overwhelmed by emotion. See that lion? I talked about threat, right? See that lion? To an avoidant, emotion is the lion. You understand? They're actually scared of it. Have you ever met anyone who's like that? You wouldn't know what I'm talking about, right? Probably many members of our family. But why does that happen? Why does that happen? It's not because that person's strong, by the way. I need you to understand. That's not healthy. And that person will not be able to be healthy in a relationship. Okay? It's not strength to numb your emotions. It's not strength to be disconnected from your emotions. Actual strength comes when you are able to process your emotions, regulate your emotions, and manage your emotions. But you can't do that by suppressing them. Suppressing emotion is like taking I use this example of the cheesecake, right? You take a slice of cheesecake, and cheesecake needs to be digested and processed before it can be released. Everyone with me? But imagine you don't want to deal with all that processing and that digesting, and you're like, I can't be bothered. I'm going to put my cheesecake in my purse. And I'm going to zip it up real tight. So in this example, the cheesecake is the emotion, all right? Everybody with me? And you don't want to process it. You don't want to digest it. You can't be bothered, or you don't have the tools. And so you put it in your bag. And so now you have this cheesecake in your bag, right? But what happens to the cheesecake after one day locked up in your bag? It's a messy bag, right? But tell me what happens after a month locked up in the bag. What happens after a year locked up in the bag? What happens after a decade or two locked up in the bag? Anyone? It's not cheesecake anymore, and now it is alive. And it's poison. Why? Because you never digested it in the healthy way. You locked it up and said, what cheesecake? I don't see any cheesecake. I see no cheesecake, therefore there's no cheesecake. It doesn't disappear because it's locked up in your bag. So there's so many people with all this undigested cheesecake. You understand what I'm saying? And it ain't cheesecake anymore, it's poison. And it causes havoc. It will make you sick, and it will definitely affect your relationships. Because cheesecake needs to be digested before it can be released. In the same way, emotions need to be digested. And how do you digest emotion? Maybe like, how do I do that? I don't want to deal with sadness. Who likes it? Who likes to feel sad? Who likes to feel angry? You know, we don't like to feel afraid, but these are all emotions that serve a purpose, and Allah created them with a purpose. And they are also messengers. They are giving us a message. So if we block them or we suppress them, they turn toxic. And then they affect everything in our life. So when we grow up with say a parent who's either explosive or totally emotionally unavailable, narcissistic, whatever it may be, the child is not able to develop in a healthy way. And when I say they cannot develop, I mean even the brain development, that in order for a child to develop in a healthy way, there's certain necessities. So even if a child is not, if someone might say, I didn't deal with trauma, I wasn't abused, I wasn't hit, I wasn't sexually abused. Maybe they were, but maybe they weren't. But instead, maybe it was emotional neglect. And when a child grows up not getting the affection and the emotional attunement that is necessary for health, that is a type of trauma. Okay, so understand that trauma is too much of something or too little of something. It's when something bad happens or when something good doesn't happen or that you need it. All right? So now here's the interesting, I'm going to tell you something that's going to blow your mind. Are you guys ready? You guys don't look ready. You're ready? Do you want to understand the mother-in-law problem? Hey, who wants to understand it? Who wants to? Girl, we need to talk. Everybody, you want to understand it? All right, listen carefully. So here's what happens. Are you guys ready? Taking notes? You know what's funny, when I say this in a seminar, that's when people take out their phones and start recording. Like they were not recording before, and then as soon as... So here's what happens. I want you to rewind. The phones are coming up. I want you to rewind to the household of this little girl. Okay? She grows up in a house where her emotional needs are unmet. Her emotional needs are unmet, either because of neglect, abuse, or simply having completely emotionally unavailable parent or parents. Parents who did not know how to attune to her emotions. Or parents who had no idea what to do with their own emotions because they're carrying that rotten cheesecake from their own childhood. Okay? So she grows up with these emotional needs that are not met, but the emotional needs don't disappear because they were unmet. Because it's like a need like eating and drinking and breathing. And so she carries that need into her adult life. And now what does she do? Well, she's looking to fulfill that need still, because it's a hunger that was never filled. You understand? You're hungry, if you can't eat here, you're gonna eat here. You know what I'm saying? You need to fill that need. So what does she do? She grows up and she's looking still to fulfill that need. So she might become a people pleaser. She might look for approval from her social circle. She might be always on social media posting, look what I did, showing off, what we call showing off. And the purpose of the showing off is what? There's a need inside that wasn't fulfilled where it was supposed to be, and that was by the parent. The parent did not show the unconditional love and approval and emotional attunement that little girl needed. And so she's still looking for it. So she'll look for it in society. She'll look for it in her friends. She'll look for it online. She'll look for it in social, maybe if, in some cases, this is where daddy issues comes from, right? Where, we're talking maybe even outside of Islam. This is why, sometimes someone might be more promiscuous. This is actually what's at the root, is that they're looking for that love and closeness that they didn't get from the parent. All right? So what happens now, we're at this little girl, now she's grown up. She's looking for this approval and this love in social media and her friends and maybe by getting fancy purses and by driving fancy cars. Okay? Having a fancy house, having fancy clothing. But deep down, she is showing off, not because she's just born arrogant, but because she didn't have this need fulfilled in childhood. Everybody with me? Now she gets married. You're with me, yeah? On this journey of this little girl. She gets married. And now she's married, and in her marriage, she also doesn't have her emotional needs fulfilled. Why? Because she has a very roommate relationship with her husband. She has a very transactional relationship. They also don't have a healthy relationship. They are just living under the same roof. So her husband is also not fulfilling her emotional needs. Then she has a son. Y'all ready for this? And this is where all of those emotional needs that were unmet from childhood in her marriage is now all of it, the entire planet of it, put on this poor little human child. So what follows is a very unhealthy relationship between the mother and the child. This is not love. This is not love. This is unhealthy, insecure attachment. Whether you want to use spiritual language or psychological language, it is an unhealthy, insecure attachment to the child. But why did it happen? Because she didn't have those emotional needs met where it was supposed to be. In childhood by her parents, and then even in the marriage by her husband. So now this son has to play all those roles. He has to be the husband she don't have. Seriously. He has to be the father, the maternal, the parental, everything she didn't get. And now she puts that all on this son of hers. And this is where it becomes so unhealthy and so dysfunctional. She revolves her life around this child in a way that is so imbalanced and so unhealthy. But it's because there was a vacancy. There's something missing that was supposed to be fulfilled. And that's why that dynamic is so unhealthy. And then when he grows up and gets married, that is how we get the mother-in-law problem. It's very deep-rooted. She never had her emotional needs met. And the only place she put all of her hopes to have those emotional needs met is in her child. And it's usually her son. So now when he gets married, that's a threat to her. Psychologically, that's a threat to her. And it's a very deep threat because she now feels she's going to be abandoned. And she probably has an abandonment wound. So now she's going to be abandoned by her son. Why? Because now he's going to love someone else more than her. Or even the same as her. She has to be number one. And she has to always make him prove that she's number one. This is dysfunction. This is dysfunction. And it breaks families. And it causes illness. And it's just so unhealthy. But what is the root cause? The root cause is that these emotional needs were not fulfilled in a healthy way in childhood. We really need to heal ourselves and change the way we raise our children. We need to heal ourselves and change the way we parent because it's all rooted there. And when you talk about generational trauma, how does that happen? It happens because that little child grew up in dysfunction, in something that was missing or something that was harmful. And so when she or he grew up, guess what they did? Number one, they will become attracted to someone who mimics the dysfunction they grew up with. Isn't that lovely? Isn't that lovely? See, do you guys catch what I said? That if you grow up, I want you to think about it like this. When you grow up in dysfunction, when you grow up in a home that's on fire, that person will actually feel more comfortable in dysfunction and a house that's on fire. And that's because the nervous system prefers a familiar hell to an unfamiliar heaven. So what happens is that this child grows up either to be an abuser or marry an abuser. And that's how the cycle continues. So what I'll leave you with, inshallah, I think, how much time do we have? It is 10 minutes, okay. I do want to have time for Q&A. So I'll pause here. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم إنه غفور رحيم سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. One quick announcement is that I have my books. If anyone's interested in getting a copy, I have all 3 of my books. The other thing is that inshallah we'll meet the same time next week and the following Wednesday. So we'll be having it every Wednesday, inshallah. Let's go ahead and open it up for questions or reflections. Yes, sister.
How do you fix this? Like for that small girl, second for that wife, and then when that wife becomes a mother, at what level? So if that's the
Yes.
mother-in-law,
Yes.
and the daughter-in-law, how can you fix it?
Yes.
If you're a mother,
Yes.
and have a husband who's not,
Yes.
how do you fix for your children?
Yes.
And then as a daughter, how do you fix it?
So this is a very, very important and difficult question. So she's asking, how do you fix it at these different levels? How do you fix it if it's the little girl? How do you fix it if you're the wife? Or how do you fix it if you're the daughter-in-law, for example? Or even the mother-in-law. Maybe you're the mother-in-law. At any level, this is what I want to say, and this is the take home. At any level, it is fixable. It is fixable. But, you can't fix it for another person unless they want it. Make sense? You can't save another person who doesn't want to be saved or who doesn't see a problem. You know, this idea that if I drown myself enough, I'll save a drowning person. Doesn't work. So that's the first thing, because as women, you know, we're the saviors, we want to save the world, and we think, if only I can, you know, amputate enough limbs, I can save them. You know, if I can just kill myself enough, if I can just erase myself enough, or drown myself enough, or overwhelm myself enough, then I'll save the person. It doesn't work like that. So the first thing is, if it is a child, the best thing you can do for that child is to heal yourself. If you're the parent. We all are dealing with generational trauma, by the way. I can tell you that right now, that within our community, there's an unbelievable amount of generational trauma. The amount of sexual abuse that I've seen in our community as children, emotional neglect, emotional abandonment, you know, emotional unavailable parents, parents who were so conditional in their love. It's like in our culture. And it is so far from the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. Because the Prophet ﷺ literally said, the first 7 years is unconditional love. And so where are we doing that? And you know what the studies have shown? That the majority of the brain, connections, and even the neurogen, like the creation of the brain cells and everything is happening in the first 3 years. You know, the time when we're like leaving our kid to cry, or you don't want to spoil them by holding them. That's all wrong. That's all wrong, because that's an abandonment to that child. The child needs to securely attach to the parent, especially in those first 3 years. Unconditional love. Okay? You're not looking at behavior, because it's like this idea that, oh, my child is misbehaving. If your 2-year-old or your 3-year-old is throwing a temper tantrum, they're not misbehaving. This is literally how big their brain is. They're not misbehaving. They're not disrespecting you. They're 3. You know what I mean? That is the level of their development. But how do you teach them in a way that it's safe, but it's also not permissive without boundaries? And this is its own science. I mean, we won't get into it, but I would advise looking into gentle parenting or positive parenting, okay? But the question of how do we heal when we're adults, right? And I think that the most important thing is healing your own shame, learning to have boundaries, and believing that you deserve better. Because a lot of us just don't have a lot of self-worth. And we will for sure pass that on to our children. Because our children will not necessarily listen to what we say, but they will listen to what we do. They are watching us, and they are modeling. And I'll say this, whenever I meet a woman who is passively sitting in her own fire, I'll put it that way. She is passively sitting in her own fire. She most of the time watched her mother do the same thing. This is how it works. And so I want to remind you that you are setting the example for your children. They are going to watch you and they're going to learn. Whatever you do. When women put up with infidelity, this is another big one. When women put up with infidelity, they are sending a message to their daughters and their sons that it's okay. And when they grow up, it's like this weird pattern, because they end up in the same situation. The children will end up in the same situation, modeling the exact same situation that they saw with their parents. And what is the mother modeled? That it's okay. It's okay to be disrespected. It's okay to be mistreated. You just keep on swallowing. I met a girl who told me, she said, my mother told me that you should be able to drink poison and keep a smile on your face. That's the message. Absolutely not. So the healing has to happen by you understanding that you deserve to be treated at a certain level of respect. And this is God-given. This is God-given. This isn't something that someone can take away. Okay? But that's something you have to do with yourself. And then once you believe that you deserve better treatment, you'll start to be able to put boundaries. And let me just tell you something that happens when you put boundaries. I'll wrap up with this, inshallah. If someone wants full access to your house, to be able to do whatever they want, whenever they want, how are they going to feel when you start putting up walls and doors? How are they going to feel? Are they going to be happy? Are they going to congratulate you? No, they're going to hate that. So you're going to be like, but whenever I put boundaries, I get pushback. Well, of course you get pushback. Of course you get pushback because they want full access. They want to be able to take liberties and they don't want boundaries. So someone who wants to take liberties with, basically wants to be able to take advantage, they're not going to like your boundaries. You do not need someone else to sign off on your boundaries. That's the whole point. You don't go and get permission before you lock your door at night. Do you go and ask someone, oh, look at that. And then people, oh, look at her. She's so rude. She closes her door at night. You have to have a door. You have to have a lock. You have to have walls. And you don't need anyone's permission to do so. You understand? That's not.
Or they say, she's changed.
She's changed. Oh, I love that. Guess what? If we stop changing, we're dead. Like, when does any living thing stop changing? When it dies. We have to be changing and hopefully in a better direction. Yeah, I know, they say it like it's an insult. You've changed. Oh, so much, sorry. It's like, oh, I certainly hope so. I hope that I'm growing. Because if I'm stunted, then that's a problem. That's a sign of death. That's a sign of spiritual, emotional, psychological death if I'm stunted. So change is a good thing. But yes, the ones who want access at any time to do anything aren't going to like your walls, and they aren't going to like your doors.
Is it because that women are so dependent on their walihan, I would say?
Their what?
Husband or on father or...
I think it's a combination of things. I think sometimes it's dependence, sometimes it's financial dependence, just to be practical. Sometimes it's emotional dependence, also, on their families in general.
The mothers tell the daughters that, look, if you don't give in, he'll leave you. Where will you go?
Okay, so
That is a task.
if you don't give in, he'll leave you. Where will you go? So the issue now is, yes, women need to have a support system where they don't need to drink poison just to survive. I mean, that's basics, right? Basics. Like, it's like telling a woman, stay in the burning house, because where else are you gonna go? Where else are you gonna go? Come on, at least it has a roof. But it's on fire, mama. It's on fire, baba. Like, it's on fire. No, sister, have sabr. Have sabr and stay in the burning house and swallow the poison while you're at it. And this is my favorite. And keep your children in the burning house for the sake of your children. Seriously? Keep your children in a burning house for the sake of your children. No, that's not what you should do. You should stop the fire or get out. It's really very simple. It's not complicated. So you stop the fire. And look, we're not saying we don't try to fix things first. When I asked someone, okay, 1 minute? Okay. So when I asked in a class, what do you do if your house is on fire? And one lady screams, "Run." And I said, I appreciate the sentiment, but maybe try to save the house first, right? Call the fire department first. So try to fix the problem first. Getting counseling, getting mediators, getting family involved. Try to stop the fire. But the question is, when the fire doesn't stop, then what? This is where the problem is. You have to run, don't walk out of a burning house where the fire isn't stopping. You tried the fire department. You tried the fire extinguisher, and it doesn't stop. This is where the problem is. Because people will say, no, sister, have sabr, stay, and keep your children for the sake of your children in the burning house. That's the problem. So you have to believe, you have to heal to believe that you deserve to be in a house that's not on fire and to be treated better. Okay? And then you put boundaries and you hold those boundaries because no one's going to like them. And if needed, I know, and if needed, if the fire doesn't stop, you run, don't walk out of the burning house. And you don't say that a burning house is better than no house. No, no house is better than a burning house.